Ladies and gentlemen, this is Rick Reinhardt, and this is the good old-fashioned Philly Wrestling Podcast. I'm here with Alan Fenstermaker, and we're going to be talking to you a lot about what's going on with AEW and WWE. Alan, I wanted to talk with you a little bit about the pay-per-view that just happened the other day in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
And I'm going to also talk a little bit about AEW before we get into that. So one thing I want to say about AEW is I've been watching the weekly shows. I'm excited to tune in and watch them. And one of the things that I've been noticing, I have to agree a little bit with what Jim Cornette's saying, that the whole circusy thing is not that appealing to me. It's cool though. I disagree with Jim Cornette on this one. I like seeing the hardcore stuff, like the dude getting reverse tombstone or whatever through the glass table was cool, and seeing Cody punch through the glass window at Jericho's face was really cool. I was screaming out loud in my living room with nobody in the house because it was so cool. But the other thing that I want to talk about with AEW is that these guys, they need to get some bigger name people on the bill. It's cool that they're getting some of the younger guys over, and I feel like they need to bring in some guys who will be interesting, because as somebody who's now tuning into a new league, I don't know who some of these guys are, and I don't leave remembering who they are. I mean,
Yeah, I agree. I'm the same way with it too. Like, I know there's a lot of guys in AEW that I know, like, who the big guys are. Like, I know, like, Cody Rhodes, of course, and Chris Jericho. But when it comes to a lot of the other names, it's guys that I don't really know, because it's younger guys that I know that they do need to bring in more, like, more bigger names. But who do you think you'd like to see in AEW?
That's a real good question. I mean, I'm hoping to see guys instead of seeing guys from like the old Attitude Era and things like that, like people like D'Lo Brown and people who are still doing it out there. I don't really necessarily want to see like old WWE guys there that were with them during the Attitude Era, and I'm not really that interested in seeing some of the the people who were around in WWE and the millennials. However, like I do really genuinely like what they're doing with what's his name, man, from the WWE, who's now there, Moxley.
Yeah, John Moxley. I remember John Moxley was in WWE as Dean Ambrose, and I know, like, he just seems like his John Moxley. He's like coming into his own, because WWE, like, I know, like, a lot of times, like, they tended to hold guys back by like scripting their promos and like not letting them be themselves. But the key part of like being a successful character in wrestling is being able to like have the character not exactly you, but maybe like you amped up. Like, I know The Rock said the one time that Dwayne Johnson, actually what The Rock is Dwayne Johnson amped all the way up on the highest level possible. So like if a wrestler could actually relate to their own gimmick and they could actually feel it, that gimmick or character will be unstoppable. And I feel like that's what John Moxley is in AEW. It's like John Moxley, he could is a better gimmick for him than the Dean Ambrose gimmick.
Right. And it's an interesting thing, because there's a lot of guys who who I would actually really like to see in AEW is a lot of the guys that really didn't get a fair shot from ECW after ECW folded. Like, people like Danny Doring and Roadkill and, people that, like, have earned their spot in the world of pro wrestling that just hadn't really gotten their big break. I think people, I think in AEW they could get over there, you know what I mean? And I would like to see you know, you know, I want to see tradition carried on. Like, I would love to see people like Arn Anderson come back. I know some of these guys have already been coming back, like Tully Blanchard and shit like that. And I think Arn might have even appeared on a program not that long ago. I didn't see it if he did, but I heard something like that. But I'd like to see the classic NWA, WCW wrestlers that can, like kind of like the way like Flair and Hogan are being utilized from WWE.
Yeah.
I'd like to see a lot more of the familiar faces in AEW. And there's all kinds of guys that they could be working with. I mean, like, people like the franchise, Shane Douglas, and all these different guys, from, in the past of pro wrestling who are still in the business and still doing their thing, even if they're not in the ring like they used to be,
Yeah, like, it's funny you mentioned Tully Blanchard because his daughter, Tessa Blanchard, is, like, really unstoppable, and she's doing amazing things in wrestling. And she actually, I just saw recently, too, she made the list of top women's wrestlers this year, which I believe it because I've seen her in the ring, and she's good. And that's why, like I said before, like, what they should do, like, actually, I don't think it should happen in WWE. I think what should happen is Charlotte Flair should somehow get into AEW and have a match with Tessa in AEW because I feel like WWE would like kind of like water that match down, but in AEW that both of them would actually be able to work at their absolute best because either that or like see Tessa Blanchard and Charlotte Flair go after the tag belts too. That would be like another epic moment.
Yeah, that would be really interesting, and I see what you're saying about them. In AEW, kind of like an NWA, WCW kind of ring. I get that. I don't think they're gonna let go of Charlotte though. She's hot right now. I mean, she's like she's almost like the female version of, you know what? She's probably the hottest wrestler in the world right now, and I know Bray Wyatt just won the world title. But who has been on a run quite like Charlotte besides, the Nature Boy? I mean, what's she, an 11 times women's champion now in WWE?
Yeah.
So okay, so tell me about the pay-per-view, because I didn't get a chance to see it.
Well, I kind of, because I kind of forgot about the pay-per-view was on, so, like, I only saw a couple matches, but I kind of flipped through.
Well, let's real quick just tell the fans what pay-per-view we're talking about.
Oh, this is Crown Jewel. Yeah, this is a Crown Jewel pay-per-view over in Saudi Arabia.
Okay, cool. So the fans out there, they all know what we're talking about. So tell us about pay-per-view, Alan.
Yeah, the first match was Brock Lesnar, Cain Velasquez, which that was like a really interesting thing because Cain Velasquez and Brock Lesnar, they had a match back in the UFC. Where Cain Velasquez defeated Brock Lesnar for the UFC championship, and it was kind of like I wasn't sure if lightning was going to strike twice if Brock was gonna avenge his loss against Cain Velasquez, or like if or I didn't even know if Cain Velasquez would beat Brock, but as it turned out, Brock beat Cain Velasquez by submission of all things. And it was a really cool thing seeing Cain Velasquez in WWE, in another crossover from the UFC. Like, you got plenty of them that crossover from UFC. You got Ronda Rousey, Ken Shamrock, Dan Severn, all those greats that that were in the UFC that crossed over and did really well in WWE, and it was kind of cool seeing another one of those matches. I'd like to see another one like that again too, like Cain Velasquez versus Brock Lesnar. Like I could see like a rematch going on between them, and Brock did win, and Brock did avenge his loss, and then. Also, too, like another match that it was Team Hogan versus Team Flair, and where Roman Reigns picked up the victory for Team Hogan.
Wow, see that's a big win for him, man.
Yeah.
How did my man Ricochet look in that one?
Dude, Ricochet looked pretty good. Ricochet, I'm surprised. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he got the world title within the next year. It's got to come because he's too good not to get a title shot, or at least a like the Intercontinental belt, or at least the U.S. title.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think with him, it's like I get the superhero gimmick, and I think that like he pulls it off well because he's such a great high flyer and stuff like that. I'm just, I've never really been like a big fan of like the whole superhero stuff when it comes to pro wrestling. But I would love to see like him embrace a character that is really who he is, because I believe his ability in the ring, he's almost like a Rob Van Dam.
Yeah, exactly.
He's got like all these real innovative ass shit that he's doing. It's pretty cool,
Yeah.
So tell me what happened with Bray Wyatt, because I heard that he is now the Universal Champion, and everybody saw that one coming. But how did it all go down? How did it go over?
Well, pretty much with that match, like right there, was they Falls Count Anywhere, because I remember the last match it got stopped because it was at Hell in a Cell, and people were not happy with that at all, how that ended. But
yeah, I was watching that. It was a little funny,
Yeah, and normally, I know Hell in a Cell has gotten getting pretty crazy. Like I remember Mick Foley, he's been in some pretty crazy Hell in a Cell matches, and out of his Hell in a Cell matches that he was in, none of them got stopped for any reason at all.
Yeah.
But for some reason they had to end this match early because for God knows what, because Seth Rollins got a sledgehammer. Hey, hell, freaking Triple H used a sledgehammer how many times in the ring, and not once has one of his matches been stopped because of that.
Yeah, I remember the fans were really doing that, and that was a real backfire. So what went down?
Well, Bray Wyatt ended up winning. I know it went back and forth, but Seth Rollins, they battled up on top of the ring apron, not the ring apron, the stage up there, and
oh wow,
threw Bray off the stage, and I thought for sure that he'd have him beat, but Bray came back and he picked up the victory, the 1, 2, 3.
Gotcha. So we have a new WWE Universal Champion, and it's the man with more mystique and inside the Enigma more than anybody that's doing it today in pro wrestling. The Fiend, Bray Wyatt.
Yeah.
So all right, so now jumping off of the pay-per-view for a minute. How about AEW last week? We saw the Rock and Roll Express were on there. And Ricky Morton took a bump through a table, man, off of the stage, man. I mean, what's the guy, 70 years old?
Yeah, that's crazy.
And we've been seeing them locally in the Philly area, and they were at some CCW shows and some other shows, and it's just amazing to even see that they're still doing it, let alone the shit that they're doing.
Yeah.
So I mean, that was real cool to see. With AEW, I'm sorry, I'm yawning here, man. I'm in bed. I'm about to go to bed, man. I'm on the line here with Alan, who's across town. We got to talk pro wrestling, and we were talking pro wrestling on the phone, and we decided, we need to record this right now because of all the stuff that's going on with pro wrestling.
Yeah, because a lot of times when you feel something, you just got to go with it. Sometimes that's how it was, and we were having a good talk about wrestling. We just had to get it out there for you, the fans, because and honestly, if you guys ever want to join in, just feel free to comment below, and then we'll talk about whatever you guys want to talk about or whatever you want to hear, because that's what we're doing it for. It's the fans of pro wrestling, and so if you guys want to hear anything, just let us know. We'll talk about it on the air.
That's right, and something that I want to talk about too is the New Heart Foundation in MLW. First off, with MLW, on the rise and working on a pay-per-view and all this stuff, the New Heart Foundation could play a huge role in all this stuff that's going on. Also, if AEW was able to lock in Pillman Jr. and was able to get him to bring in Teddy Hart and them guys, I mean, that would be a huge gain for AEW. I mean, that might be the move, you know what I mean? But then again, I could see all those guys in a WWE ring doing well. So, I mean, at this point in time, if I was WWE or AEW, I would try and lock in the New Heart Foundation with any of it, because those guys are pro wrestling. You know what I mean?
Exactly, yeah.
And like you were saying with Tessa, I think if I was WWE or AEW, I would sign Tessa. If I was WWE or AEW, I would definitely try and sign some of the guys from CCW or some of the local cats. You know what I mean? Because there's so much shit going on where there's so much talent out there. And to be honest with you, this is I don't say this shit to ever shoot myself in the foot with working with WWE or anything like that. But I'm just calling it how I see it. It's like the way that they've been training people and the way that they've been, broadcasting the television shows, and they're still coming out of that whole PG era, and they're still coming out of that whole promo era of legendary crappy promos. So I think what needs to happen is like they got to bring in some guys that have that old school flair. And, the New Heart Foundation, when they come to the ring, they look like they're ready to kick some fucking ass. So, I mean, seeing their entrance in MLW was enough to make me want to watch pro wrestling again. You know what I mean? Because when you see people that really get it, it makes everybody else look like shit.
Yeah,
or they look boring,
Yeah, also another thing I wouldn't mind seeing like Hammerstone from MLW. I could see him being a major player too, in like either AEW or WWE.
Nice.
Yeah, and then also you got the Lucha Brothers, and honestly, like what I would like to see is like Lucha House Party in WWE versus the Lucha Brothers. That would be a pretty sick match to see, like a bunch of luchadors going at it in WWE, and that the Lucha House Party and Lucha Brothers are probably like some of the best teams wrestling has to offer that are the luchadors.
I agree. And you know who would actually, this is a funny thing, but you know who would be an interesting addition to AEW?
Who?
Mike Dalton.
Dude, that would be pretty cool. I'd like to see that.
I'd like to see Mike Dalton managing a team in AEW.
Yeah, and also another thing I just saw recently online too, I did hear rumors that Randy Orton's contract with WWE is running out. And I did see like some hints on the internet. I don't know if they're rumors or what, but I did hear somewhere that Randy Orton might be jumping ship from WWE to AEW. That would be pretty interesting, because Randy Orton was in WWE for the longest time, and now like to have him like go over to AEW, that would make this whole battle real, because AEW in a sense is bringing back like the old Monday Night Wars. I know like is right now like AEW is not on the same nights as Raw and SmackDown, but NXT is on the same nights on Wednesday night as AEW, which in my opinion, if you ask me, like NXT is doing a lot better than WWE's SmackDown and WWE's Raw.
Well, it's interesting because AEW has been beating everything, if I'm not mistaken, as far as the ratings goes.
Yeah.
So, but here's the thing is, yeah, they are doing that, but WWE right now is getting into position. If you look at all the people who have the titles right now in WWE, it's all the guys who could be setting up for a 2, 3, 4, 5 year run on top of the company.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that one of the things that WWE did in the Attitude Era was they kind of took their time. They got into a position because they were losing for a while in the Attitude Era, WCW, and the way that they came back was a slow, steady build, and they were able to get into position, lock that position, and then ride it all the way to the end zone with The Rock and Stone Cold and Sable and The Undertaker and everybody getting hot the way they did. There was a lot of things that didn't work with the Attitude Era in WWE. Like, for an example, I always loved the Nation of Domination. I mean, they were like one of my favorite groups in a long time, but it just didn't really work out the way that they wanted it to. I mean, The Rock did come out of there, so that was a big thing, but it ended up being a launching pad for him opposed to like something that really went down as one of the greatest factions of all time. So, like, where I'm going with all that is like, I think that WWE right now is getting themselves into position like a cobra and is just willing to strike at any minute. So what I'm kind of hoping for is that AEW is able to bring in some guys that we haven't seen in a while, really spice things up on TV, keep challenging and raising the bar, and then what's going to happen is pro wrestling in general is just going to keep getting better and better, and I think that's what all the fans want.
Yeah, I agree, and I still remember like that one thing that strikes me out like when it comes to the Monday Night Wars between Monday Night Raw and Monday Nitro and with WCW was when D-Generation X invaded WCW Nitro, and honestly, I think it'd be kind of cool like to see something like that happen now, like with WWE like sending a faction to invade AEW, and honestly, I said this before too. Like, I know the NWO guys got older, but like what I think would be cool if they did is like have like someone from the NWO come back into WWE. But what they do is they come back in a way to like pass the torch on. Like what they'll do is they'll go through the roster and then they'll induct members of the new NWO. And then after the new NWO is formed, like have like something similar to like when DX invaded Monday Nitro, to have like the new NWO, have them go and invade AEW.
Yeah, I feel you, and it's interesting because we're in a time period right now where new things are happening and unfolding. I wouldn't be surprised if we started to see a lot of people coming out of the woodwork in the wrestling world, like people that we haven't thought about in a while. I have a feeling that if it's going to happen, it's going to happen now. And what also could be happening is, I remember we were talking earlier about how, seeing like, some of the old Attitude Era guys in AEW or some of the 2010, wrestlers and stuff like that in AEW. It wasn't really what I'm thinking that I want to see. However, I do want to see some of the indie wrestlers that have been working their asses off for the last, 10, 20 years really get their shine and get their spot in pro wrestling history. Like people like Rob Noxious in CCW, Chris Banks, Bro Keller,
Ricky Hernandez,
the sexy psycho Adrian Bliss,
Stefan
Malcolm King, Stefan Ramon, all these different guys, Ed House, all these guys that have been working their asses off, the Dog Pound.
Also, too, he's a Philly wrestler, too. Philly Mike Swanson, I could see him really taking off, too.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is with all these guys is like, they're wrestling a lot of shows right now in the Philly area, and we're seeing them like Alan, that we've been doing these shows things a while now, and these guys are working their asses off, and imagine Rob Noxious in a WWE ring or an AEW ring doing the hardcore shit that he does. I mean, he could be like a fucking Mick Foley and all this shit.
Dude, that would be nuts. He could bring that. He could easily bring back the hardcore division.
Yeah, and then imagine someone like Rebecca Payne, like right there with him doing the same shit. You know what I mean? Like they would get so fucking over doing that hardcore shit if they were, you know, put into a position where they could, you know?
Yeah.
And then, you know, I mean, I've always been kind of like into like certain kinds of wrestling styles. Like I would love to see, you know, the lucha libre stuff and the Japanese style wrestling come together like the way ECW used to do it. Like they would do the hardcore shit, but then they would also do like the real technical style wrestling, but then also like the high flying shit. And the way that those three things, those three elements came together in pro wrestling, you know, it really made ECW have a certain level of prestige that you don't always see in pro wrestling. Like ECW might have been known for, you know, all the real hardcore shit, but when they would really want to just tear down a building, tear down the house, you know, tear the roof off the joint with some good wrestling. I mean, some of the best matches ever came out of there with, like, you know, cats like Eddie Guerrero and Psychosis and Rey Mysterio and, you know, the franchise Shane Douglas. All these guys that could really just get in there and really wrestle. I would love to see, you know, a promotion really do that these days. And I'm hoping that MLW is the one that really pulls that off. Maybe AEW too, because AEW has the best commentators in the wrestling business right now. And I want to focus on them a little bit too, is Jim Ross and Tony Schiavone. I mean, hearing these two guys go back and forth, it's like old. It reminds me of old school WCW and then later WCW. It's like you got like the 91 to 93 era with Jim Ross.
Yeah, and then MLW, they got Jim Cornette as the commentator.
Yeah, and Jim Cornette in this time period, to me, is one of the most interesting people in the business because he's doing all these podcasts and he's fucking filling everybody up with so much wrestling knowledge just by hearing him talk and hearing all the shit that he talks too. I mean, you could tell that this fucking guy, you know, knows how to fucking, you know, defend himself and talk circles around motherfuckers. Yeah. So I mean, that's the kind of person you want to see in a good spot in the wrestling world. And if for whatever reason MLW doesn't take off, I would love to see Jim Cornette in a very powerful position in the wrestling business. Like, you know, the way Paul Heyman is in position right now with Vince and WWE, it's like Paul Heyman's one of the most important people in the wrestling business right now. And I would love to see Jim Cornette get that kind of credit, and I would love to see other people that really know wrestling get that kind of credit too, like people like Bret Hart. You know what I mean? People who have been around for forever, Ted DiBiase. You know, I'd love to see all these people contributing large amounts of their knowledge in high positions in the wrestling business. I think that's where someone like Vince McMahon could really change the business again for the better, is by bringing in some of these classic guys that have all this knowledge and putting them in, like, you know, some kind of position where it really matters. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that we covered a lot of ground here. I think that this, you know, concludes the first episode of this new podcast. Thank you for listening out there, Alan. Thanks for being with me, man.
No problem, bro.
It's good talk. It's good talking this wrestling stuff, man. You know what I mean?
It is, man. It's good therapy.
It sure is, man. And thanks to all the workers in the entire business. Thank you to all the people making this stuff happen. It's so nice to be able to sit back and watch all this stuff again. We're rooting for everybody. And unlike what Jim Cornette says, I think that we all must do our parts in the wrestling world. And sometimes what needs to be done is it needs support. And we're here at the Pro Wrestling Archives, based out of Philadelphia. We are here to support pro wrestling.